What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 44 of Lobbing Scorchers, now brought to you by Sounder at Heart. This is Ari Lillianwall. I got producer Noah here with me. And Noah, we got a hell of a show for the people today. How are you feeling?
Oh, it's early. It's Thursday morning. There's no place I'd rather be than with you, Ari.
Yeah, I feel the same way recording this draw pod that we've got, as Noah said, at 8 a.m. here on Thursday after Seattle's midweek fixture at the Houston Dynamo last night, in which they tied 2-2. But, you know, I feel like the scoreline 2-2 doesn't necessarily tell the full story of this game. There was a lot that happened in this game that we're going to break down that was very relevant to us here at Lobbing Scorchers. The Paul Rothrock agenda has skyrocketed through the absolute roof. We're going to talk about that, of course. We're probably going to spend, these shows are usually around an hour. I would say we're probably going to do about 58 minutes on Paul Rothrock today. And we're actually also going to get to a lot more for match day 21 in MLS. So we got a jam-packed show for you today. It's going to be a good one. But, of course, before we do that, as always, I'd like to thank all our paid subs. You can now find us on the Sounder at Heart platform, which we're very excited about. All you have to do now to support the show is go to sounderatheart.com/LS. Super easy. You just scroll down to subscribe. And you can lend us some support instead of the previous way. So we appreciate everyone who has supported us. I'm going to go through our paid subs right now, as I always do, because we love and appreciate you guys that much. I'd like to thank Tom, Lachlan Galbraith, Samuel Fout, Nate Bowling, Joey Pasquinelli, Brendan Murphy, Pete Earls, Rhombus, Nate Bontier, Tyler Nakatsu, Owen Mason, David Rodriguez, Christopher Maley, Bill Breitenbach, Mike Lentini, Aaron B., Derek Richards, Sounder Naves, Dan Pavetto, Mike Standish, Ryan Shane, Eric Stanley, my nephews, CJ and Miles Marinakis, Andy Hill, Ian Mitchell, and Greg Hoger. I know that's a long list, but you know, I feel compelled to go through it every week, Noah, because we really appreciate all the support, and we appreciate the increased listenership that we've seen since we announced our new partnership with Sounder at Heart. We're getting the Sounder at Heart bump, and we see that, so we appreciate all our new listeners as well. And we're excited to keep this thing going as we navigate through the rest of the MLS season here. Also, if you have not done so yet, and you're listening to this, subscribe to the Lobbing Scorchers YouTube.
Sub to the YouTube.
Sub to the YouTube. It's doing pretty well. Last time I looked, Noah, we were up to like 135 or so on there. Ooh. Which, we're kind of cooking, but it's not quite to 150 yet, which was the next goal. So if you haven't yet, help us on the drive to 150 subs on YouTube. We'll get there soon enough, and we appreciate the support on there as well. But yeah, as I said, support the show by subscribing to Sounder at Heart. If you're not already a paid subscriber, Sounder at Heart is offering a 1-month free trial at either the backer, $25 a year, or supporter, $75 a year levels. This means you can support the show while getting a full suite of incredible Seattle soccer content.
Part of that full suite, we don't have time for it today, but The Athletic put out an article about the Sounders. Was it good? Was it bad? Mark and Jeremiah broke it down on Soundbites, which is behind a paywall. So if you go and you subscribe at the backer tier and you haven't subscribed before at sounderatheart.com/LS, we get a little money and you get more content. So kind of a win-win.
It is a win-win. Good breakdown there, Noah. Before we get into this Sounders Dynamo game, we had a couple of news items we wanted to hit here. So let's get into these. We had a Leo Chu transfer rumor.
That's a mouthful.
That was a mouthful. Apparently, there's a Brazilian club interested in the services of Leo Chu. Noah, do you have more on that?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, other than the fact that it's a rumor, so it doesn't really mean anything, but it looks like Atletico is interested in signing Leo Chu, and that's just about all we know. But, you know, I would think that if the Sounders get a genuinely good offer, in the past, Fluminense had reportedly offered about $4 million, but the Sounders were looking for closer to $5 million. I think in the position that they're in, moving him might not be the worst.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you can get a bag for Leo Chu, wouldn't you probably do it for $4 million? I don't know.
I would have. I would have done it for $4 million.
I probably would have done it for $4 million. I was thinking about what his market value probably is, and I mean, I'll be honest, $4 million is not what I would have said at this point. But we'll see if anything comes of that. I know that Leo Chu, he himself, I believe, had expressed a desire to return to playing soccer in Brazil at one point where he's from. So we'll see if anything comes of that. It would be a nice bit of business if they could get it back for Leo Chu.
It'd help them with their 9 debacle.
Yeah, exactly.
Get you a little bag to spend a little money.
Resource allocation. The Sounders and the Carlisle Group have completed the purchase of the Seattle Reign. Do you have more on that?
Well, there's a whole article on Sounder Heart you guys can go read more about. But, it seems like a really cool opportunity for the Sounders and the Reign to do more collaborations together. They're technically under the same ownership group now, and they're going to be sharing some resources. TBD, I guess more is to be announced, but that'd be kind of sick. That gives the Sounders and the Reign both a pretty big bump. The Sounders are one of the leading technical teams in the league, so for the Reign to be able to use some of those resources, and then for the Sounders to actually get eyes on them and an outside opinion from the Reign coaching staff, I think that's kind of sick. That's pretty cool. I don't know a lot of clubs that do that.
Yeah, definitely go read the full breakdown on Sounder at Heart there. And then just a quick Pedro de la Vega update before we get into the game. He's still a little ways out as per Brian Schmetzer's last comments on the topic, but he has been back in training, correct? But maybe just not at full capacity. So that's at least one encouraging sign that a return to the field might be imminent. He'll have to make it through full training and then, get back on the field and make it through games without doing his hamstring again. But it's at least somewhat encouraging that he seems to be on a positive trajectory to returning to play. And really, I'm looking forward to that day if it comes, just because, we've talked about it a lot, but I feel robbed of getting to watch this team with De La Vega, which that was the most interesting part of this season going into this season, is how that signing would work and if it could have the impact that they hoped and thought it would have. And we just haven't gotten to see it because he's been injured the whole time. So,
I miss his swag, Ari. I miss his swag.
The team is missing a lot of dynamic creativity and swag with him on the sidelines. So let's hope he gets back soon.
Paul Rothrock's making up for it, though.
It's true, and we're actually going to talk about that exact topic, and that's a good segue. Let's get into this Seattle 2-2 draw at the Houston Dynamo, which the first thing I have to say about this is one of my talking points from the last episode actually got undermined. I was talking about how much Seattle struggles historically with these away trips to Houston, which was true at one point in the Siggy Schmid years. That was definitely a recurring storyline. But apparently, as per what I read on Sounder at Heart, actually, it's a great website. They got their facts straight. Seattle's record at Houston under Brian Schmetzer is actually quite good. They've won 5 games there. I think the record is something like 5-2-1 or something. It's not something roughly close to that. So their form at Houston has actually been much improved in recent years under Schmetz. And I think I did mention on the last episode that they got a playoff dub there, or they clinched a series there. One of the years they made a run to MLS Cup. So this road trip actually has not been as treacherous as it used to be in recent years. That being said, I think the point relatively still stood of I didn't particularly like Seattle's chances of getting a result in this game, given the fact that it's at a congested portion of their schedule and that they were going to be fielding a rotated lineup, which they did. So let's talk about that. Let's do our lineup reaction. I'll tell you what, Noah, when I saw this lineup, best lineup of the season.
Easily.
This is the most excited I've been to watch a game, and that was because they rolled it out, and it had a winger duo of Paul Rothrock and RBW.
Yeah,
that's
nasty.
So I saw that and I was thinking about it, and remember the show we recorded a while back, and it was in the worst of the dog days where the team wasn't scoring, they were dropping points, taking L's at home, drawing Austin FC zeros, and we were talking about just throw a lineup out there that's got a new wrinkle, a curveball, something different than what we've been seeing, just to throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks. We did a whole show and talked about it over the course of multiple weeks about how we would just like to see something like that. This is sort of what I was talking about. A Paul Rothrock and RBW winger duo. Now, Schmetz only did it because out of necessity and fixture congestion and needing to rotate guys out, but we still got to see something that I wanted to see something like this. If I could have drawn up a wish list of a tactical look that I would want to see. The winger duo of Paul Rothrock and RBW, that would be near the top of the list. I mean, everyone knows that this is a adamantly pro Paul Rothrock pod, but I thought RBW on the wing is interesting to me because that's, as I understand it, when he was coming up through the academy, he was an attacking midfielder, and that was out wide there. Is where they typically played him. I think he might have played a little bit of center mid, but like I think ultimately the way they saw him was as a wide attacker. But then as he got closer to MLS, they realized that his skill set and a better way to get him on the field probably earlier in MLS was to drop him back to fullback, and he's got a pretty decent two-way skill set, so that made sense as well. And for most of RBW's time in MLS, that's where we've seen him. But I think he's kind of a winger by trade, really. So this was an opportunity to see him in that position, and I think there might be something to that as far as he's definitely a menace from out wide. He's definitely got some decent service that seems to be improving all the time. And in his academy days, he was a very goal dangerous player, and that's probably the main reason that RBW has gotten the hype and overseas interest that he has, is because of that skill set that has looked quite dynamic at times. Not as much since he's been to MLS, but we really haven't gotten to see him play that much in MLS. So anyway, I was excited to watch this winger duo. It was always going to be a big game for the agendas, like good or bad. That was where my mind went when I saw that lineup was, I mean, for agenda check, Rothrock and RBW stock is going to either rise or fall, and rise it did in the case of Paul Rothrock. But this game got off to a pretty terrible start for Seattle, to the point where I was pretty sure this was chalked, Noah. Like, I'm not going to lie. The Dynamo, well, for the first half hour, I actually thought Seattle was hanging with it as well as you could hope for or expect given the lineup situation and playing away at Houston in pretty unforgiving elements. But right on the half hour mark, it went off the rails a little bit. It was the kind of sequence that Seattle has had too much this season, where they lose control of a game and concede soft goals. And I mean, as tilting as it was that they conceded the 2 goals, first in the 30th minute, then in the 40th minute, I think who scored them was more aggravating. Latif Blessing, on both of them, which, no disrespect to Latif Blessing at all. He's been a very good player in this league for a long time. He's not a striker.
No.
That should be banging a brace on you in a 10-minute span.
Dude scored a header. He's 5'7".
The second goal was a header where he was just completely unmarked. No one was on him. So it's not like he got some crazy vertical and beasted anybody. But it was actually worse than that because there was just no one around him.
Exactly.
And it was an entirely free header. And that made it 2-0. And then the first goal was just a terrible giveaway where the Dynamo won the ball.
I think Obed turned it over.
Yeah, I think it was an Obed turnover, and then Atencio was trying to block the guy as he was trying to crash through, and it deflected off him. And he it was kind of like in FIFA when you're able to pull that maneuver, and it was an easy cross for a tap and finish. So I mean, Latif Blessing is out there looking like the most resourceful number 9 in MLS, banging in goals 10 minutes apart from each other. It's 2-0 in the first half. And honestly,
he almost gets another one too.
Yeah.
Like he barely
he
misses.
almost had the first half, had he?
Yeah. Frei got that nice save and that like fingertip save, and oh my God.
So, having Latif Blessing look like an MVP caliber player against your defense, not ideal. Like I said, very good player in the league. Was on LAFC for a long time. I think Sporting Kansas City, the club of professional wrestling enthusiasts, also used to employ Latif Blessing to positive effect, but just not the guy that you can have bagging a brace on you. If Hector Herrera gets you for 1 or 2, I can see that. Just Latif Blessing? Okay. At the point that it was 2-0, Noah, I thought this was pretty much over, to the point where, when I'm watching these games, I'm also working the rest of the games that are going on around the league. And the way they have the scheduling now is all the games pretty much are going on at the same time, which has really made our job on the MLS editorial desk quite a bit harder. You have to keep track of like 15 games going on all at once. And I'm also trying to focus Seattle too. But like, there's a lot going on the slate last night. And I was like, you know what? This Seattle game is chalked. I'm going to turn to 360 for a little bit and try and get some work done. And I'll check back in on it. But like, this is over. And and it was funny. What's funny is in that little period where I was watching 360 instead of streaming the game, you actually texted me. And it was still 2-0 at this point. And you said, I think Paul Rothrock is actually like really good, not a bit or something.
Yeah, I said, what did I say? I said, I fear Rothrock is actually good, like not a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, I wonder what he did. I thought he might have scored, but then I looked at it and he didn't score. So I just assumed that he must have done something cool, but that didn't ultimately really matter. But literally like maybe 5 minutes later, could have been less. He did it again, folks.
He did it.
It's unbelievable. Paul Rothrock in the 57th minute, bangs the goal to make it 2-1, and it was a really sick goal.
It was nasty.
He made a great run to free himself up and run onto that ball over the top. And then
he started the play too.
He started the play. That's right. He started the whole sequence and then made a great run, ran onto the ball, got on the breakaway with the goalkeeper. Could have laid it off to Jordan Morris. He said, "Fuck that!
Yep.
I'm Paul Rothrock," and then he bammed it off the goalkeeper and then converted the rebound. And at that point, it's a whole new ballgame, 2-1. And I felt pretty good at that point of Seattle coming back and at least tying it, which they ultimately did. But it felt like they wrestled control of the game in the second half. Just played. The first half was one of the worst halves of the season.
Yeah.
And the second half was pretty damn good, I thought.
Yeah.
And Paul Rothrock got rewarded for another goal, his second straight week with an MLS goal. And I mean, yeah, let's do some Paul Rothrock talk.
Let's do it.
Like, did you notice just like it seemed like he had just a different kind of vibe out there. He was swagging. He was strutting around the field. He was doing all kinds of flicks and tricks. He was running straight at guys. He was talking shit to the Dynamo.
He
was
wanted
getting
to
in
fight.
there.
Yeah.
I was like, good. Like, as well as Paul Rothrock has played like an Open Cup play and as good as he's looked at times in scoring the MLS goals that he's scored, like this was a different Paul Rothrock. It was like, oh, okay. Like,
yeah.
And you know how I took it was that like not that he feels like he's fully arrived. I'm sure he wouldn't tell you that, but just that he has this confidence now of like, all right, I'm not happy to be here. I belong here and I can excel here.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm one of the best players on this field. I don't care that I'm Paul Rothrock. Like I'm here to score some goals and make your life a living hell if you're the opposition. And I just like he got my attention even more with just his disposition, as much as the goal. Did you notice that?
No, I totally did. I've been noticing that too. Like I think honestly part of that has to do with him truly buying into the Brian Schmetzer system. Like after the last match with, another Paul Rothrock goal, Brian said in the post game, he's like, he basically made a whole big deal about how hard Paul trains and how like this is the type of guy who I want on my team and like really gassing him up. And it really seems like he's bought into that, which like when you buy into that and you're just like, fuck this, I'm here, I'm working hard and I'm getting rewarded for working hard. Like that feels so good. And like to see him get those goals and to like play with the swag that he was playing with. The play that I even texted you about, it didn't lead to anything, but it was like some really nice interplay where he beats his man out on the wing, plays it into Albert, and then makes, like another leading run after that. He's just setting himself up. He's great in transition. He's playing with so much confidence. It's like, I don't know, I think, like you said, we started this kind of as a bit, but not really. Like we really did like how he played, but he's ascended even past, I think, my wildest expectations.
Oh,
it's insane.
The thing is, I would be lying if I said that and I think I've even admitted this, like I would be lying if I said that I thought or truly believed that this goal scoring run was sustainable or would continue throughout the season. And just the fact that he's been plugged in these last 2 games and he's scored goals in both of them, including that goal, which was just a great individual effort on the goal and also at a huge spot in the game.
Yeah.
Where you're down 2-0, you're on the ropes. If you lose this game, especially with how other results went last night, I mean, you're in big trouble. The draw wasn't a great result from the standings perspective, but just in terms of the circumstances of the game and the fact that they had this rotated lineup out there. I mean, that was a huge goal. It was a huge goal, and we're going to get to it in the agenda check, but Paul Rothrock is soaring. Seattle tied the game just 6 minutes later, actually, via another unexpected hero, Jackson Reagan.
The GOAT.
Jackson Reagan gets his first MLS goal. It was a perfectly executed set piece. Albert Rusnak with the delivery again. I mean,
that's three set piece like goal contributions from Albert in the last 3 games.
Yeah, I said it last week, and but like this is the Albert Rusnak that I was so excited about when they signed him, and the one that I watched on Real Salt Lake for many years. You know, this was one of the best dead ball players in the league. When he was with RSL, he racked up so many assists like that off corners and set pieces, and it's been frustrating to have him not be as productive in that facet of the game since he's been here. But he's turned it up. The delivery on these free kicks that he's hitting is just, I mean, you can't hit these any better. Jackson Reagan does a great job to make the run to free himself up, and then that finish was it was a very center back goal. He's just lumbering in there and just basically lunges his body out indiscriminately. But I guess, I mean, he definitely...
It was an outside of the foot
he
kind of
he knew what he was doing,
though.
But it just deflected off of him, and it took a wicked deflection to the far post. And I was very happy to see that for Jackson Reagan, not just because it tied the game, but because something that we have talked about is I've talked about how I want to see him be more dangerous on those set pieces. I was thinking of it more of him being an aerial threat, you know, because I mean, when you watch him defend crosses in the box, his height and his size is such a huge asset. Like sometimes he barely even has to jump to get the ball out of there. And I don't get why he hasn't used that asset more on attacking set pieces, a la Chad Marshall. Man, it really. I know we've talked about this before, but like, it really underscores just how good and how dominant Chad Marshall was, because it's not easy to be a CB who can be that goal dangerous and be that much of a beast in the air. Jackson Reagan is 6'6", and he hasn't been able to replicate like the type of presence that Chad Marshall had in those situations. But maybe this was a sign that they're going to start maximizing him on these set plays more. I know this wasn't a header, but it was still a good CB goal. He still has to make the run and finish, and it was just a great connection with Rusnak. And it's a tie game. And from there, you know, I think it is a little disappointing that Seattle didn't win this game, because they actually, at the point of the equalizer and the Rothrock goal, they had really good control of the game, and there was a winner for the taking for them. They couldn't quite find one, and they also, frankly, got pretty lucky that Houston didn't remember the chance right at the end.
Yeah.
I don't know how the guy missed that one. He wide.
Just didn't poke. He didn't even try and shoot it.
I think he thought that the ball was maybe further away from him than it actually was.
He didn't even make an attempt.
All he had to do was stick his foot out, and that's a game winner, 3-2, and that would have been very deflating. So Seattle got lucky, but I mean, credit to the team, this rotated lineup, for coming back. Credit to
They also seemed really gassed. Like at the end, the Sounders were done. I mean, Paul's played 180 minutes. He was back there in the final, like in like the 88th minute, winning 50-50s in the box. Like then, I mean, this team was pretty tired. That's
another way to ingratiate yourself with the fan base, though, is, you know, score that goal and then just put in the full 90 and bust your lungs, run all over the field, like you said, getting into duels, winning 50-50s. I mean, this was really the we've been talking about him for all season, but this was the Paul Rothrock breakout game. Absolutely. I guess I wanted to talk about whether we thought this was a good or bad result. And I mean, I think there's two ways you can look at it. I think the result in isolation is pretty good, like a road point at Houston where you go down and have to come back to tie it and you hold on and get the point. That's that's a pretty good result, honestly. But the flip side way to look at that is just, I mean, you're at a spot on the table and now approaching a point in the season where like good draws and moral victories and all that, like they're only going to take you so far. I mean, Seattle still ended up falling back below the playoff line, even with this result. So this allows them to keep pretty decent pace to get back in the mix. But with how results went last night, you've got Austin, Houston, and Portland all on 24 points now. Seattle's on 22 in 10th. But it puts a lot of pressure on this FC Dallas game, which we're going to talk about. But they got to win this to really keep pace, and they could have put themselves in a lot better position if they could have found that third goal and won this game. But overall, when you take into account the fact, like how this game started, and that you got bammed on twice, not once but twice by Latif's Blessing in the first half. Fighting back to take the point there. And really, I think just the whole performance in the second half, it was really like night and day in terms of the control that Seattle had over the game, the chances that they were generating, their work on defense. So I do think it's a good result, but I mean, they do have to start winning these games here to actually get back up the table and put themselves in comfortable playoff positioning as opposed to on the fringes of it.
I think it was a good result only because they were getting bammed on so hard in the first half. Like, I think if that doesn't happen, if we realize that the 5 in the back or the 3 in the back with 2 wing backs has never worked, maybe that's something, that you can yell at Brian about, or maybe it's just the double pivot not working in the midfield.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that. Talk about that because JP got rotated out for this game, and it was an Obed and Atencio double pivot, and we were kind of talking about it before we started recording, but Obed and Atencio have each become key players on this team in their own right. They're players that I feel good about plugging each of them in next to JP in a double pivot. I think Obed, we've talked about a lot, has taken a very pronounced leap this year, and he's become a much more dangerous and multifaceted and impactful player that they can now play at more than one position. So all that is great. Them in a double pivot together, I don't know if correlation is causation, but it seems like in that double pivot, Seattle tends to lose control of games and get run on in midfields more so than in other setups. Am I wrong?
No, I don't think you're wrong at all. I mean, I think the thing that JP adds to this team is that steadiness, that confidence, and when you're a young player and you can rely on someone like JP to cover for your mistakes, you're able to be a lot more dynamic. And I just think that like both of those players are great, but like you said, like Obed is 18 years old and Josh is he 18? 19. So it's like they don't have even half the amount of experience that JP has, and they're just not the same. Neither of them are the same player that JP is.
They're not that like biting physical enforcer type presence that JP has, that Ozzy famously had.
That Cody Baker has.
Actually, that's a good shout. Like, Cody Baker might not be a bad 6, honestly.
Yeah, he could probably honestly do pretty well there.
But yeah, I don't know. It's not to say necessarily that the entire first half was on those two players. It's just more of a vibes thing where I feel like there's been a link between that double pivot specifically and these game states like we saw in the first half of this game, where it gets a little out of control and the midfield's all over the place. And I think that was a factor in those 2 goals. So I understand why Schmetz ran it, given the fact that this was a scenario where you probably had to rotate JP out. But I think it's worth thinking about. They've played Cristian back at that spot in a couple of these games recently. They kind of had to play him at right back in this game, which we're going to talk about. But anyway, the first half was just kind of a mess in general. Like, I don't mean to necessarily peg it all on them or on the midfielders. But I do think that was a factor.
I mean, it definitely was. You can't really deny it. And, both of them are really talented players, but they're also young and they're going to make mistakes. And they're both really honestly should be playing the same position. So it's not the greatest combination when you're playing a 3 in the back essentially, because you're playing 5 with 2 wing backs. And every time they got torched, it was because the wing backs were caught so high up the field. The entire center of the pitch was spread wide open. If Obed makes a mistake, Josh is too high up the field. He's not recovering. It's just it didn't work, and that's okay. And they're gonna get better, but it did not look good.
And I forgot to write this down, but there was a halftime substitution in this game.
Yeah.
Was there not?
Yeah.
Yamar came off at the half, which he didn't have a great first half. So honestly, I understood the sub. Nathan played in this game, and then Nuhu also subbed on in this game. So there was a lot of mixing and matching during the game, and the second half looked a lot better. So I think we talk about how Schmetz doesn't always make his subs as early as we would like, but he actually did in this game, and it had a positive impact on the game.
Yeah, I thought he had honestly like great subs. I thought he said in his post-game presser that someone was coming off at halftime and he didn't really care who it was. He was trying to send a message. He was like, this was terrible. He took off Yamar, put on Nuhu, which I think was a pretty good move, and then in the 60th swapped Atencio for Musovski and Morris for Raul. Raul did fucking nothing like he's been doing for the past year. So that was unfortunate, but it was nice to see Nathan out there, and John Bell played all right, and then JP got like 10 minutes. So yeah.
Let's get into this FC Dallas game. Does that sound good? And then we can hit questions and agenda check. FC Dallas have been one of the worst teams in the Western Conference this year. They come to Lumen Field on Saturday for match day 22, but they are a little bit resurgent right now. They just beat Minnesota United 5-3. They hung 5 goals on them, and their DP number 9, Petar Musa, Croatian guy, he had a hat trick in that game. And this team seems to be experiencing a new coach bump right now. They fired their coach Nico Esteves a few weeks ago after an underwhelming start to the season. Where their owner talked about it later, and he was talking about how we have this great roster that I feel like we should be getting more out of, even with the injuries. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that assessment, but that's how they saw it. They fired Nico Esteves. They gave it to an interim guy who I can't remember his name, but he's won 2 straight games, and they scored 5 goals in their last game. And Musa, this Croatian striker, they spent a ton of money on him. I believe it broke their transfer record, and he was brought in as they built him as this big time. This guy's going to score a ton of goals. He's going to be the Zlatan of this MLS next new era. They didn't say that, but like he was supposed to be really good for them, and then scored a few goals early in the season, but hadn't scored in a few weeks coming into this game, and they got a breakout performance. So all that's to say, this is a more dangerous Dallas team, I think, right now than they would have been earlier in the season. They've dealt with a lot of injuries this season. Their whole team, a lot of it has been built the last couple years around Jesus Ferreira and Paul Arriola. Both of those guys have missed a lot of time with injury, not just this year, but like dating back to last year as well. Alan Velasco, their star young DP, who was a really highly rated Argentine prospect. He tore his ACL in the playoffs last year and hasn't played it.
That was against Seattle, right?
Against Seattle, yeah.
That was sad.
So they haven't had him at all, and that was one of the reasons I wasn't so sure about their decision to fire Esteves, because it's like you don't want to use injuries as an excuse, but they've been so injured that I feel like it's kind of hard to evaluate, and the whole contention that their roster is so loaded that they should have been able to win all these games with Nico Esteves, like with all the injuries that they've had. I just don't know about that. But either way, the new coach bump is a thing, and they seem to be getting one heading into this Seattle matchup. That being said, I mean, this is all right. Even taking into consideration how tough this season has been at times, Seattle should win this game. FC Dallas, first of all, they do not do well at Seattle. I don't know what the all-time record is, but it's something incredibly lopsided, and Seattle's gotten the better of them in the playoffs multiple times over the last few years. And FC Dallas are 0-6-3 on the road this year. That's
bad.
Their downfall. They don't have a single road win. Even Seattle, for all the struggles that they've had, especially at home, they've got 3 road wins this year. FC Dallas, other than St. Louis, is the only other team in the West that hasn't won a road game this year. And St. Louis has gotten 5 draws. So they're the worst road team in the West. If you can't beat them on your home field, that's an issue. You're probably your chances of actually working your way back into the playoff race here are not going to be especially good if you can't handle an opponent like this on your home field. They haven't won a road game this entire year, and they fired their coach 2 weeks ago. They're playing better, but this is a game that I think Seattle should win, and that they need to win. Just look at the table. Like, they need to start winning these games.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the match, that the Minnesota FC Dallas match, doesn't really say a lot about this team, to be honest. Like, their new coach, Peter Lusane, who is La Liga and French legend, who also ended his career in Dallas. He's good, but like, I don't think that really does anything. If you believe in XG or you don't, they had a 1.52 XG. Minnesota had a 3.16 XG.
And Minnesota is still missing hella guys.
Yeah, Minnesota had 21 shots. Dallas had 9. They outshot them over double. What I'll say about FC Dallas is they're unbeaten in 6 home games, so they have good home presence. And they also have Martin Poss, who is literally the best goalkeeper in the league.
Good shout.
So I think that really helped them in this match. They found some production from Musa, which is awesome. That means he's heating up. But you have to get it done, because this is not a good team.
I always like any opportunity to shout out Martin Poss, because you're right. He's been one of if not the best goalkeepers in the league the last year or so. And it doesn't, why does that not get talked about? It's because it's FC Dallas.
It's because it's FC Dallas.
Yeah. He really
he made 4 saves last
If you look
night.
at all the goalkeeper stats, like, I always look at it. I don't know if this is true this year, but there was a point last year where I was looking at it and I was like, it was when I was trying to decide who to vote for goalkeeper of the year.
Oh yeah,
and I was looking at it and I was like, wow, this guy's literally number 1 in everything.
Yeah, he's number 1 in saves per match, so that means that he's bailing his team out.
Yeah, he's
the most of everyone
under absolute siege.
Yeah,
no, he's sick. He's probably their best player.
Yeah, which I don't feel like doesn't bode well for the Sounders, considering they get 4 chances a game, and
this is not the goalkeeper you want to be facing right now.
And he makes an average of 4.5.
But they do yield a ton of chances, so hopefully they can capitalize on that. Let's hit the agenda check. No, it's going to be a good one this week.
Yeah.
I've got 5 written down here. Let's just get right into it. Let's start with the obvious. Paul Rothrock. If last week was skyrocketed, this week is into stratospheres and galaxies as of yet undiscovered by mankind. It's unreal.
Extraterrestrial.
It's a huge boon for Lobbing Scorchers. I feel so validated. We've been banging this drum all season, dating back to last season. Started as a bit, and now it doesn't even have to be a bit anymore. It's a real thing.
We manifested this.
I want to take at least some degree of credit for it, and also, like I said, man, I really think there's something to just the kind of presence that he had in this game. I was, my eyebrows were raised watching it, especially the point at the end where he was getting in the guy's face and talking shit to him. It was just a side of Paul Rothrock that we hadn't even seen yet. And I think there's a decent chance we are watching a legitimate and long-serving MLS player here. I don't know if he's ever actually going to become a bona fide week-in, week-out starter with this team or with any MLS team. But, if he keeps playing like this and producing, he's going to have a role somewhere. And if he keeps doing it for Seattle, it should be here. You know, he's from here, and he's really he's come through and bailed this team out in a lot of ways. Like for all the jokes and kind of fluffing up of it that we do, like where would this team be without Paul Rothrock right now? It would not be in the mix for a playoff spot. I really don't think so.
Yeah. That's crazy to say that like your what is it, your depth chart number 5 or 4 player in
Back
this
up to the
position.
backups coming into the year.
Yeah, and like he, you know, one of the last guys selected for the roster this season is making one of the biggest impacts on the team and keeping them alive in the playoffs is crazy. Rothrock also, this comes from Frank McDonald, has more Sounders goals than the past 5 DPs against.
Yes, I retweeted that stat.
Yeah,
that's not necessarily a good stat, but it's a funny stat.
Yeah, and that's I don't know. I don't even know. I'm just like speechless.
I know. I feel the same way. It's honestly it's the storyline of the season for me. It's like why I'm excited to tune in every week. Now that we've won, Noah, and he's actually starting and playing a lot of minutes and still banging in goals, like it's unreal. And the thing is, at this point, like there's not even a debate to be had over whether he should be playing or get. He's the only guy on the team that's scoring goals consistently.
I think it's so funny that like that was literally our whole argument when we made the Play Paul Rothrock episode was like he's the only guy who could score. Put him on the field. And then they put him on the field.
And he keeps scoring.
And he keeps scoring.
It's funny how that works. Man, we should be coaches.
I'm just saying.
RBW. I think the RBW agenda is honestly, it's pretty much a push for this week.
Yeah.
I thought he had some good moments, and he didn't make any egregious mistakes, which for a young player like this, that's always, I think that's like objective number 1 is don't do anything outrageous or stupid, or don't get a red card, which he did a couple weeks ago.
He did do that.
So
we defended him though.
We did, but like. It was good to see that he made it through this game without any such shenanigans. And you see I think finally getting to watch RBW play a little bit more, I do see what all the scouts are seeing in terms of like, isn't it fun to watch when he's taking on a defender 1v1 and just mosses him? Yeah. Like he can do that stuff. And he doesn't do it like super consistently yet, but if he gets to a point where he does, this is a very potentially dangerous attacking player, honestly. Like, I don't know how you could watch him and not at least have some sort of excitement about that aspect of his game. He's entertaining and he's fun to watch. That's what I like about him.
Yeah, I love, one of my biggest things with wingers like that is something that frustrates me a lot, actually, is, a player goes down for a foul or starts screaming at the ref because they get fouled. Dude, this guy, he's small. He does need to hit the gym, whatever. He's a young kid. He'll get bodied off the ball, and it's like literally a millisecond later, he's back up and hounding the ball that he just like somehow poked through this dude's legs and trying to make a run onto it. Like he's nonstop.
I also feel like he's pretty damn swole this year.
He is big. He's bigger. I'm not saying that he's a little guy. He probably could beat my ass, but like, you know what I mean? I'm saying like he got bodied.
He's not
off the
like
ball.
A fully grown dude.
Yeah, he's a kid.
Yeah,
he's a kid.
19.
But like, yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I was a dumbass when I was 19. I wouldn't say I was an adult, but it's like, yeah. So anyway,
I think the RBW agenda. It's not like drastically strengthened, but he certainly didn't weaken it.
Yeah.
I have the Obed Atencio double pivot written down here. We already talked about it, but yeah, I mean, that stock is down for me. I don't know. Some people might have different diagnoses of what went wrong in that first half, but I just think the midfield in general, like this has been a recurring theme this year where you have these stretches of these games where the midfield's just getting ran on. Yeah. Like that. So whatever you attribute that to, it's not good. The Steph Frei's cooked agenda, I think, arguably took a hit in this game. Steph Frei made some good saves.
It did. I hate to report it to you folks, but
Steph Frei was back. You're the NDT guy.
Steph Frei was back in a big way, and we don't win that game. We don't get a result in that game without him making some really nice saves. He made a double save, and he made a really sick poke save that just I mean, frankly, those were going to be goals.
This take could backfire on me, but I mean, I've been of the mind that the Steph Fry's Cook stuff is, I get it, but it's a little overblown. He's definitely conceded more goals that he shouldn't have this year than he has pretty much any other year. I agree with that. I just don't see goalkeeping as the biggest issue for why this team is dropping points or why they're conceding some of the goals that they're conceding. But for the people who are proponents of the Andy T agenda, I do agree that Andy T has been better this year.
Yeah,
I will agree with that. But
well, yeah, it's not a anti. I guess I'm not anti Frei because I think he still has a lot to give and he's one of the best to ever play in the MLS. But I feel like Andy T's got that fire and he's ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, Andy T is the wave of the future for sure. The right back Cristian Roldan agenda was strengthened in this game, in my opinion. Alex is out with the concussion that he suffered in the last game, and so with this mixed and matched rotated lineup, you had Cristian slotting back at right back, and he's looked really good there. And it's kind of crazy just how you can plug him in basically anywhere. Like you could probably put him in at goalkeeper and he would do pretty good. Like,
well, we know Alex is good at goalkeeper.
That's a good point, good reference. But the right back Roldan was originally Cristian's thing before they drafted his brother. I wish we'd had Lobbing Scorchers back in those days because right back Roldan would have been a key character. Well, just because back then there was so much more novelty to it because I didn't ever even consider it a thing, and then they plugged him back there. And he did pretty well back then too, but it's so valuable, honestly, to have a guy that you can do stuff like that with. Remember Brad Evans back in the day? They would kind of do similar stuff, just plug him in wherever they. And Brad Evans, vocally, was not always a fan of that. Like he was like, there are times where I just feel like I want a position, but Cristian, he's doing what's best for the team right now, and. I thought he put in a shift at right back in this game.
Yeah, that right side was lethal, man. Him and Paul Rothrock and
oh my god, the right back Cristian Paul Rothrock right-sided combo. That's what I'm talking about.
I mean, listen, you could put Cristian as the head coach, and I think he would do well. Like he's hands down been one of the best utility players in MLS. Over the last 5 years. I don't know who you could really point to that's someone who you can just plug and play and have confidence that he's going to be able to produce a result basically no matter what on the contract that he's on.
Yeah, it's crazy when you really think about it because he was a number 10 at UW.
Yeah.
But then when he got to MLS, they moved him back to the defensive midfield because they thought that's where he projected better as a pro, and also I think it's where Seattle more needed him. And he became one of the top players in the league at that position, to the point where when they were messing around and experimenting with him at right mid, I think I and a lot of other people were like, this is not you're moving him out of his best position.
Yeah.
But then he played so well at right mid that it became something that people were against to move him back when they started moving him back to the defensive midfield. And I think the reality is that there might not even be just a best position. He just plays both at a very, very high level. And I don't think he's looked as effective at right mid this year, but I think if you look at his full track record playing at that position, I mean, he's shown that he can be very good and very dynamic as an attacking player and a facilitator. And I still believe that a lot of what went wrong last year was correlated to the time that he missed with the concussion. I mean, we talked about that a lot last season, but he gets plugged in at a different position again in this game and put in a great shift. So the right back Cristian Roldan agenda is strengthened, even though I'm sure Alex will take that back over when he's back from the concussion. But for this game, it really worked well.
But should he? That's the question. Because I'm not saying that that Alex is bad by any means, but
you like Cristian starting there better?
I mean, if Cristian's going to get bumped off the field for into the future because there's not a spot for him on the field with players coming back from injury.
It's
I prefer him over Alex.
It's an interesting debate. We'll probably debate that one more. Let's hit some questions real quick and then jump around the league. Does that sound good?
Absolutely. Thank you all for your questions. Eventually, we will also be taking questions from the Sounder at Heart Discord. We're going to figure that out. That's just, that's so much tech. And if you guys know Ari, it's a lot of tech. Yeah, it's a lot of tech. So from the Twitter sphere and Ari's mentions, we're going to start out here with a question that I also asked himself. Did Raul do anything to justify winning his starting spot back?
Not really. I think at this point, the first choice 11 in an ideal week is pretty much decided with Jordan at the 9, which, I have to take an L on that because my take was, and I still maintain to an extent that at least one of this team's best plans on offense is to have Raul out there and just fire up Hail Marys and hope that some of them go in. That is sadly appears to be one of the most sustainable plans. And I say that somewhat in jest, but if you look at the goals that they've scored this year, that's how they've gotten a few of them. But I think watching how it's played out over the last few weeks, watching how the offense has looked with Raul as the starter, compared to the fact that Jordan Morris is now on a hot streak where he scored 4 goals in the last few weeks. I think it's a situation where you ride the hot hand and you also you try the look that that's different from what wasn't working previously, and you just keep riding that, and you let Raul play as a super sub for the moment and hope he can start to find a way to impact games more in that role. But I will say, it's definitely not an ideal situation for your DP striker that you paid a $7 or $8 million transfer fee for to be a super sub. That's not necessarily what you want on your roster. And that was honestly my argument for him starting as much as anything, which is that, when you have your resources allocated as such, and you have that player basically you not starting and not contributing, that's almost like baked in that that's going to have just a negative effect on your team and your results, because it's just like a void on the roster, right? But at the same time, you can't use that to justify continuing to bang your head against a wall and start a player who hasn't been producing and just hasn't looked very good in recent weeks. So it's a long way of saying that no, Jordan's probably the starter for the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I think Brian's willingness to put him on the bench, and honestly, Raul doesn't seem upset by the decision. You see him at training. He's just like a guy who plays with a lot of confidence.
Did you see the video of him gassing up Rothrock?
Yeah, he was gassing up Paul. He was like, this dude's the best guy to ever play soccer in the entire world ever. And I think that for all of the, I don't want to say hate, because I still absolutely love Raul Ruidiaz, especially for what he's contributed to this club. But for all of the honesty, the tough honesty that I've given this season, what he brings to your locker room is undeniable. He is a guy who loves mentoring young players, who loves being around in the locker room, who's going to genuinely lift up your team in those moments. Obviously, we weren't in the locker room at halftime, but we don't know that he didn't play a role in turning that switch. You know what I mean? He is a great guy to have around, and it just sucks that he's on a DP salary. If we could re-sign him for a lot less, would we keep him? I don't know. That's a tough one, but I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Next up here is a Lobbing Scorcher. This one is a scorcher, Ari. Charlemagne asks, the ball play by the young was only rivaled by the bad off-ball play. Rothrock and RBW were completely lost out there without the ball, both offensively and defensively, which I feel I don't know what game this guy was watching, but what do you think?
I don't know about that take. I didn't think Rothrock or RBW looked lost. Maybe there was an individual play or two, but as far as them that and that as being the overall assessment of their performance, that's not how I saw it. I thought, maybe RBW a little bit, but I thought Rothrock was cooking.
Yeah, I've been very high on Rothrock's off the ball movement. You can go back and listen to the other episodes. I've talked about that. That's like one of the key things that differentiates him from the other wingers on the team. Like Leo Chu, like I don't think Leo Chu's off-ball movement is good at all. I think he has great transition and great on-the-ball movement, but off the ball, he gets lost a lot of the time. So I respectfully, Charlemagne, not sure what game you were watching, but yeah, we had so many questions about the Rothrock agenda. I feel like I'll phrase it like this. Is this his peak? Is this his summit?
No, he's going to keep ascending.
Really? He's never ending. He's never going to stop. DP when?
At this point, I'm just who knows what the ceiling is. That's what's exciting about it.
Yeah.
We get to find out.
It is kind of sick. This one comes from Justin Credible. Is this the official beginning of the end for Yeimar in Seattle? His performance has been up and down for a while now, but he was deservedly yanked off at half. Feeling like he's gone the way of Arriaga. I just have no trust in him anymore.
Yeah, it was a rough one for Yeimar in the first half. The worst play, I think, was the header that led to the giveaway. I think spearheaded the second Blessing goal, which is like he just headed it right to the guy and let them get out in transition. So I don't know if it's the beginning of the end for him in Seattle. I mean, I think they're going to ride him for the rest of this season at least. But and then I guess just kind of hope that the form turns around a little bit. I mean, players do have like lulls in form, and if I look at Yeimar's year on the whole, I would say it's like only been okay.
Yeah,
you know, and I kind of think you could say that about both CBs, to be honest. Jackson Reagan got the goal. Jackson Reagan has been he's been cooking the last couple weeks.
But he was down.
Like
worse than Yeimar, I think.
In the before the last couple weeks, like there was just from both of them, honestly, not just Jackson Reagan, not just Yeimar, but there's been too many penalties, red cards, bad fouls, losing marks. There's been too many mistakes from the CB spot this year.
Yeah. I just have a hard time bagging on Yeimar so much because I still think that he's an MVP, not MVP, but like
defensive player.
Like a defensive player of the year candidate.
Defender
type.
of the year.
Yeah. Like MLS All-Star, I guess is what I was going for. Like he's the type of defender where you plug him into any other team and they'd be fucking insanely happy to have him. Like I don't think that like I think defenders are up and down. I know that people want consistency out of your defenders, and like that is kind of the whole point of being a defender is you get yelled at when you're up and down. But I don't know. I don't think that like they're the reason that they're losing games. Like maybe, but I do think generally the defense has been okay this year. It's been worse than last year.
It's been worse than last year, and there's also been like a lot more periods of time where control of the game state is lost and soft goals are conceded, even if like the raw number of goals that they've conceded isn't egregious. Just the loss of control of games and also the timing of the concessions has been pretty tough at points this year, and it's been worse than last year.
Yeah, it's still been worse than last year, and any downgrade is not good. So I'll give them that. That's true. Purple Anon asks, review and rate Schmetzer's adjustments after halftime. They played in literally like 3 formations this game, which was crazy.
No, I think we hit on that a little bit already, but I was happy to see like the in-game adjustments come earlier. That's something that we've talked about a lot, and that's been a common criticism of Schmetz that we have talked about ourselves. And so I think with that being the case, we should acknowledge like when he did something that we liked and agreed with. And in this case, I think like tinkering with it earlier in the game, if something isn't working, is what you should do. Like it's not reckless. Like I think that's exactly how I would have hoped he would handle that situation with how poorly the first half went.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I thought that he tactically. Listen, we've both been like. I feel like we've been up and down with the Brian Schmetzer thing, but I think we've stayed pretty consistent at like, even if you do let him go, which like maybe that's the right thing to do. I don't know how much that gives you, but we still both are like, I think he's still a pretty good coach. Like, I still think he's a pretty good tactical coach. And I think this game showed that like he saw, I'm going to give him this. Over the last like 2 weeks, his willingness to like change things up and accept that he's kind of been not
too stubborn, maybe.
Yeah. Like, I feel like he's clearly trying to show, maybe that's because he's on the hot seat a little bit. He's been trying to show like, okay, no, like I get it. I've been too stubborn. I don't know. That's reading into it a little bit, but the tactical adjustments clearly led to
improved
some kind
performance.
of improved performance. I mean, I also think it helped that Rothrock just absolutely dogged someone to get a goal, which, whatever. But yeah, Jackson Reagan at the 9 win. That's what Sounders Vibes asks.
Yeah, I mean he scored more goals in this game than I would expect from a Sounders striker at this point.
Yeah,
that's probably a little unfair because Jordan's been playing well, but
yeah, that's true.
It was a good striker's goal by Jackson Reagan.
It was pretty nasty outside of the foot. All right, we'll finish up with this. Nick D, thank you all for your questions. When does Rothrock start appearing on Tim's chip ads on TV? We need to get him a jalapeno Tim's chip ad.
I'm telling you.
He's a good looking guy too.
Yeah, he's a marketable athlete. Like he's the potential face of the club type upside.
Yeah, I think we should be his agents.
We probably should. We got to get him on the show.
We got to get him on the show. We got to get him on the show. Thank you all for your questions. We love you. We appreciate you.
Yeah, appreciate everyone as always for submitting those. No, we don't always hit every single one, but always like to see the discourse flowing. Happy to have my mentions be the place where that happens. Let's hit this around the league stuff, winners and losers, and get out of here. I wrote down a few just funny things that I saw from around MLS.
This first one I'm stoked about.
Winners and losers. Federico Bernardeschi had a hilarious penalty kick in Toronto FC's game against Nashville, which they ended up losing. And it was very funny because I believe it was 0-0 at the time. And Toronto FC, Bernardeschi made a great play actually himself to win the penalty kick. And then it was this dramatic moment where Bernardeschi has already missed 2 PKs for them this year. Insigne gets the ball. And he's going to the spot like he's going to take it. And then he dramatically turns around, like points at Bernardeschi. And he's like, no, you take it.
Yeah.
I believe in you, brother. Bernardeschi walks up, takes the ball from him, puts it at the spot, takes a deep breath, starts his run up. And then just Charlie Brown banana peel slips on his run up to the ball, still connects with the ball, but sends it into the 27th row.
Yeah.
And that was one of the funniest things I've seen in MLS in a little while. There's been a lot of good stuff, good content recently, but just the whole sequence with Insigne trying to be a good teammate, which these are guys that have actually reportedly had issues. Like they went at each other in practice last year. They've known each other for a long time, former Italian national team teammates. But during like the Discord in Toronto last year, there was reports out there that Insigne and Bernardeschi were butting heads. So I think this was like a symbolic thing where they were. Insigne was given in the PK, and he ate it. It's a great clip. Look up the Bernardeschi PK if you haven't seen it.
The best part too, I think that's his fourth in a row he's missed.
It was 0 for 3 this year.
Okay, 0 for 3.
It could
be
3
in a row. 3 in a row.
But it's still. He probably just. I'm sorry. I shouldn't take him. Like he probably just shouldn't take him. He's been. They've both been playing pretty well for Toronto this year, but. Let Insigne take the PKs.
I agree.
There's a cool storyline with Inter Miami homegrown Ian Frei in their game against Columbus. Now, this kid, he's like 19 or 20, and he's a decently highly touted Inter Miami academy product center back. And this kid has done his ACL 3 years in a row. When I was looking it up last night, I thought it was 2 in a row. It's 3. So like dating back to his academy days, he tore one, I believe, when he was in the academy. Then he tore it as a rookie the next year. And then after he came back from that last year, he tore it again. He tore another one again. So
and you guys think Jordan Morris is bad?
Yeah. I mean, and he's only like, I think he might be 20 or 21. So he's coming off 3 ACLs in a row. So finally, gets back on the field last night, and like 5 minutes into the game against the Crew, he scores a goal, and it was a heartwarming little moment to say. You could tell how happy he was when he tore it. When he tore it last year, I remember it was right after Messi got here, and he like dedicated the game to him and stuff, which I thought that was cool by Messi, like a random academy kid that you probably don't know that well. Like the GOAT's dedicating the game to you. But yeah, it was just it was like Hollywood like timing, and just 3 ACLs, man. That's tough. So I really hope Ian Frei like stays on the field and becomes the player that Inter Miami hopes he is. And he got off to a good start.
I got a note for Inter Miami.
Yeah.
They have great academy products, like prospects.
Kramashi,
Kramashi, you know, I don't know. Man.
I think Noah Allen.
Yep.
And Ian Frei, obviously, before he got injured, was a big one. And there's a couple of others that were missing in there. I'm really high on Kramashi.
Yeah, same.
I think he's actually got a lot, like as much upside as the pundits and the scouts are saying. Zerdan Shaqiri, Chicago Fire FC DP, had a hilarious moment at the Euros where he's playing for Switzerland. He's a Swiss national team legend, probably the best player in the history of their national team. I don't know who you would put up with him. He's played in 3 World Cups in a row, like 4 Euros in a row, been playing for them forever. And he's been a pretty big bust for Chicago, honestly. Like, just any way you look at it, he was supposed to be like a transformative signing for them that sparked all this interest in the new era for the club at Soldier Field. Like, that's what this was billed as. And, you know, for that to come good, you have to be putting up some big numbers. You got to be Haney Mukhtaring out there, and he decidedly has not been doing that. He has 14 goals, 18 assists in about 70-ish games for Chicago, which is like okay, but it's just not what it was billed as when they signed him. And so he goes to Switzerland for the or with Switzerland to the Euros, and just scored. He scored the sickest goal that he scored. He has not scored a goal this good in MLS. Wayward back pass in their game against Scotland. He pounces on it, just absolute rip into the top corner. And so I just thought that was a good bit. Like, just been such an underwhelming signing for Chicago. They're one of the worst teams in the league. And then as soon as he goes to Switzerland, he does that.
Yeah, he just becomes like the greatest player you've ever seen. Honestly, it's kind of the perfect situation though, because you have a player who's just not playing well in MLS is kind of a bust, and a team who's probably wouldn't be mad to ship him, and now he's like,
oh yeah, you have to imagine they're like dying to ship him.
Yeah, they've got to be like so stoked that he's killing it at the Euros, because they're like, all right, stonks
that's
are going up, baby.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd be very surprised, honestly, if they don't execute on that soon, because the Fire, I don't know, they need a jolt.
Yeah.
That was all I had for just the random headlines. Let's hit these winners and losers and then get out of here. For winners, I got FC Dallas, Seattle's upcoming opponent. Hung 5 goals on Minnesota United, which I know that they're pretty shorthanded and depleted right now. But when you just fired your coach and you're playing a really good team in Minnesota United, and you hang 5 goals on him, that's a good week for you, especially. And they got their second straight win under their interim coach. So, yeah, honestly, not great timing for the Sounders to catch FC Dallas. We talked about it. They still have the worst road record at least in the West, if not all of MLS. So, Seattle should be able to hang with it in that game, but this was a great result for FC Dallas. They hadn't scored 5 goals since like 2021 or something. So
that's crazy.
They had their best game of the season. Colorado Rapids got a 3-0 at St. Louis City. And I think the significant thing here is Georgi Mihailovic had a hat trick. And the Rapids continue to cook a little bit under Chris Armas. St. Louis City is down pretty bad right now. Fraud watch validated. But Colorado took care of them with ease, and it seems like this Mihailovic signing, which I thought was like a good move. That's a pretty high percentage signing.
Yeah.
You have a guy who's been provenly a very productive number 10 in the league, that, seem motivated and, can excel in MLS. So I thought that was a good signing at the time. And with games like this, that's proving to be the case. And Georgi Mihailovic is cooking for the Rapids. And then I also got the LA Galaxy. You know, I said it last week that I thought that they were back. They played NYCFC at home. Cruised to a pretty easy, honestly, 2-0 victory with no Ricky Puig. That's the important thing. But they got Joey Paints back. They got Gabriel Peck back. They got Joveljic scored a goal in this game. Diego Fagundes scored a nice goal in this game. And I just still think when I watch them play, man, like they look like such a buzzsaw sometimes. And I was disappointed that in the last few weeks they hadn't been performing up to that level. With Joey Paints injured, and you know Ricky Puig has been out with the groin injury now, but like the Galaxy are they're buzzsawing again. So I mean, everybody watch out. I am telling you, when they are on their game, it is the best attack in the league this side of Inter Miami. Let's get to the losers. I got the Philly Union again.
God, yeah.
The way that they are losing these games right now, it's phenomenal
It's so
content.
good.
As someone who does not care about the success or failures of the Philly Union, it's incredible to watch. Their last game, they lost against 9-man Inter Miami, giving up the game-winning goal to Leo Alfonso of the shout-out University of Virginia. We talked about that last week. I don't think this loss was worse, but it was almost as bad. They were in a barn burner at FC Cincinnati. Back and forth game, crazy game. FC Cincinnati had Luca Oriano score goal of the match day. Did you see that one?
Yeah, it was nasty.
From midfield. There's been a few of those in MLS this year, including one from Rui Diaz. But Chicho Arango scored one for RSL, and then Oriano, his might have been the best one. The placement on that shot was like Rui Diaz's was on like an open net, which is still not an easy shot to hit. But like this one, he had to get it over the goalkeeper, but like, you know, under the crossbar. That's insane placement, especially from where he was at on the field. It might have been a bit better than Chicho's too. That was a really sick goal. But either way, it was 3-2 in second half stoppage time, or like close to it. And the Philly Union, they tied it. They actually tied it. They put themselves in position to take what would have been, you know, not a great point considering the form that they've been in over the last couple weeks, but it would have been a good little morale boost for them to come back and get the tie there. I thought it was done and dusted. We were talking about like how we were going to handle the content for a 3-3 draw, and then they get absolutely bammed on by Lucho Acosta, who's making a bid to repeat as MVP. But like Philly, like gee, like all you had to do was make it like 2 more minutes and you've got like a galvanizing road point, and they couldn't do it. And especially coming after losing to a 9-man squad last week, I think this team is down more bad than any team in the league right now. Not necessarily just because of the run of results, but it's just the manner in which they're taking these L's.
Is Jim Curtin cooked?
I mean, I don't know. You know what's cooked? Not Jim Curtin. It's this whole Philly Union idea of we're going to be a bottom 5 spending team in the league and moneyball our way to the top. They actually made a better run at using that formula to championship success than I thought was possible. And you have to give them a lot of credit for the shrewdness and savviness of their signings and their roster moves and their youth development with all the academy kids that they've churned out. But I think they peaked with that MLS Cup loss to LAFC, and now they're in a situation where it's like, all right, you should probably like spend a little bit of money.
Yeah,
and
probably.
like that's what's gonna solve this. Like,
yeah,
you can't. I don't know how far moneyballing your way out of this is going to take you.
Yeah, penalty merchant Gazdag is not going to win you an MLS Cup. You know,
no, and you know he almost did. But I mean, remember it's crazy because like I'd say that, but I mean they were so dominant that MLS Cup year. They put up like a plus 46 GD, you know.
They were nasty.
They were nasty, but times have changed and down horrendously bad. Next loser, Sporting Kansas City, the club of professional wrestling enthusiasts, fall 4-3 to Real Salt Lake, who are still the best team in the West for my money, but ever since beating Seattle, Sporting Kansas City has looked pretty much like they did previously. They're 3-11-5, 13th in the West, and the only reason that they're not wooden spooning is because the San Jose Earthquakes have 11 points and 0.61 points per game. So,
are they trying to win games?
Yeah, I mean, the Earthquakes I could put in this section every week, but that gets redundant.
Yeah, we don't need to bully them.
It's never a bad week, honestly, in my opinion, to put Sporting KC in this section. 11 losses for Peter Vermees and company, not good.
And they got to go play Columbus in Columbus next.
Yes,
good luck.
Good segue. Speaking of Columbus. Bammed on 2-1 by Inter Miami, who didn't have Messi, Suarez, or Matias Rojas, their new signing. Hangover watch. I mean, I think Columbus they're on it right now. We did this with LAFC last year, and LAFC did seem to be hungover for a while, but they kind of proved to not be that hungover. Ultimately, they ended up beating the Sounders in the playoffs. But Columbus, I don't know. The vibes just seem a little deflated, honestly, since CCC.
Poopgate?
Yeah, exactly. Their GM left for some company that runs an EPL and like a Scottish team. They got a new guy who seems to be pretty, like they promoted internally, and that guy actually seems to be a good hire, but it's like Tim Bez was one of the best in the league.
Yeah.
And then they're also Aiden Morris is supposedly leaving.
That deal is done, I think.
That deal's done. Nancy Ball is just not cooking as much. They're not like that. They're not on the table where you would think they are. Like, I just assumed that they were like cooking for a top 4 spot easily. They're in 6th right now, 1.69 points per game, which is good but not elite. I still think they're one of the better teams in the league, but like I definitely think the vibes are hurting right now for the Crew.
Yeah, they're in a tough spot, but you never know what's going to happen. They still have some nasty players. I mean,
Cucho, one of the best in the league. Rossi, Darlington Nagbe.
Yeah.
But Morris is a big loss for them.
Yeah.
They'll have to replace him.
But they're getting a bag, so whatever.
All right. Unless you had anything else, Noah, I think we can call it right there for episode 44. Thank you so much, as always, to everyone for tuning in. Thank you to our new listeners. We've seen a uptick in our listenership since our Sounder at Heart partnership went live, so we appreciate everyone who's been tuning in who hasn't listened before. We appreciate the support from all our longtime listeners as well. Sub to the YouTube, follow on all platforms, write us reviews. What am I missing?
Share with Cucho Hernandez.
Share with Cucho. Subscribe to Sounder at Heart.
Yep.
Subscribe to the YouTube. I already said that.
SounderAtHeart.com/LS. That's it.
Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next time. Until then, we out.
Peace.